Well, welcome. Welcome to what I believe the most important session at Me2We, because we're going to be talking about health, about well-being. And I know it's been a long day. It's the last session of the day. So thank you for coming here. The fact that you're here tells me that you care about the well-being and you care about the future of the health a lot. So thank you for being here. My name is Azat, and with me is Spin. We are organizing this session, and before we start, I actually wanted to ask a question to all of you. How many of you did take the neuroscience course from Babaship? Okay. Yeah, maybe about half of the audience. Yeah, for those who took it, we're hoping to add on to the knowledge that you gained from this course. And for those who didn't take, I'm sure you're considering it, and I hope we will help you to ensure that you're taking it. We have great guests, great panelists here, and I wanted to share with you the motivation why we wanted to talk about this specific topic, the future of wellness. And here in the LEAD program, we talk a lot and we learn a lot how to be an effective leader, but we don't talk a lot about our own health. And we truly believe that to be an effective leader, you need to prioritize yourself and you need to prioritize your health. And only then you can help others to succeed. So, as I said before, we have very great guests. It's an honor for me to introduce them. We have Ghalam, Sally, Sherwin, and Anthony. Would you mind please introducing yourselves?
Sure. Would you like me to start?
Yes.
Hello? I think I have it on now. Yeah, let me just do this for a second. Hi, everyone. My name is Ghalam Imanbayev. When Azat reached out about this panel, first he's a Stanford connection, so you do say yes to Stanford connection, but he's also a fellow Kazakh from Kazakhstan, and that's a double whammy, and that EV immediately says yes, yes. So happy to be here. I was born in Kazakhstan. I grew up in Oregon. I went to Stanford for undergrad and for medical school and for business school, so I'm a triple alum here. And yet every single time I come, I still feel goosebumps about how lucky I was to be here. And I hope you all are getting a flavor of that as well and find Stanford as a home for many things beyond kind of the LEAD program. On myself, so professionally, I am an investor. I am a venture capital investor at Lightspeed Venture Partners. I'm a partner there leading efforts around health tech investments. So if you think about healthcare as it relates to technology, as it relates to services, and all of that realm, I invest across stages from both early stage growth and all the way to pre-IPO investments. Lightspeed is a $25 billion under management fund, global. It's one of the few large platform venture capital firms that has remained global. We have offices here in the Bay Area, in New York, in London, Paris, Berlin, Israel, India, and presence in Southeast Asia as well. And so just want to, given how global I think the audience is, I wanted to stress that. And very much excited to continue with this panel. So I'll hand it over to Sally.
Thank you. My name is Sally Zhen. Currently, I run a healthcare fund that focuses on longevity. I started my career within a big pharma, so in the drug development industry, and also invested early stage biotech companies, AI, genomics. Those was the early days of AI. So it's fascinating to see how much the landscape has changed. And personally, the reason we started this new effort focusing on longevity is I've seen within the healthcare systems in the US in particular, we're so much of a disease focused, as we all know, which leads to we have the highest spending in the US among most of industrial countries and one of the worst outcome if measured by life expectancy. So I think we can do a lot better than that. And we invest across drug development and digital health, wellness, fitness, using the technology and to overall improve how we age. And I think that ultimately will help us to lower the healthcare cost overall and also provide higher quality of life in the US. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah. My name is Shervin Maj. Glad to be here. So currently I'm leading product and AI for a digital wellness company called Futura, based in New York. And I'm also a member of a group in Bay Area called Life Science Angels with 30 years of history, basically focused on bio, medical device, and digital health. My focus has been mostly on the medical devices and digital health side of the story. The group has about 170 partners, focuses mostly on the pre-seed and seed investments, and of course, follow-on rounds mostly for the portfolio companies. In terms of my background, I've done biomedical research as well as medical devices initially, but for the past 15 years, done heavy focus on the digital health, initially working for corporate VC, Vodafone Venture in the Bay Area, and also co-founded an incubator here back in 2011-12, followed by doing similar thing, in terms of the product management for another group in the oncology. And then I realized basically that the challenges related to scaling innovation in large footprints, which is generally universal across a lot of countries, and tried to address that, and got lucky to sort of get into the large health system with 50 hospitals, 1,000 clinics, and work with Chief Data Officer of the organization of Providence Health to scale a number of platforms, heavily focused on data, AI, from 18 to 21. And did something similar after that also in terms of an external entity in the domain of emergency management. We just talked about wildfire, and also hurricane and software value for those kind of challenges. Actually put together a product for a company that is leading these solutions as well, and sold it to kind of major clients as well. So happy to be here and also kind of join the session.
Check, check. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Anthony Wall. I am from the American Council on Exercise. We're based here in, just locally for most of you, actually. We're in San Diego, so not too far away. And really, what we do is we're kind of at the pointed end of the stick, is we work directly with people in the health and wellness field who are looking to make lifestyle choices, whether those are professionals who want to get education or consumers like yourself. So it might be your parents, your brother, your sister, your grandparents who just need to be more active. And so we do that through a lot of collaborative approaches. At the end of the day, we might talk about the statistics. The average person isn't very healthy. We know that. And so what we do as an organization is we try and engage with those people at multiple different levels, whether it's at the state level, but down to a local health club where they may get education from an instructor. So really excited to be here, and thank you everybody for coming for the best session of the day.
Thank you. Well, let's have some round of applause to our guests. And it turns out that if you look at the screen, it turns out that I'm the only one without a doctoral degree. We have either medical doctors or PhDs here. So it's quite an exciting panelists we have here. So we want to make it more interactive, the session, and we want to give you ask as many questions as you want. But let me start first with a few questions, and then hopefully in about 4:30, I will give microphone to the audience and feel free to ask questions. So the first one, recently we saw an explosion of the investments in the health tech field, and it becomes quite a hot topic right now. I'm curious, what changed and what brought us to this point that the health topic is quite a hot topic?
Okay, before I get to the pain point, which actually lays out why health tech can be important, given that we have an international audience here, I share two personal stories actually from my early days in digital health back in 2011 when I started with Vodafone. Vodafone is a global telco back in UK. Our office actually was in Bay Area here, and in my first year I was a little bit confused as I was identifying good ideas in the US side or anywhere else, and I was hearing from my colleagues and experts in the US that this is not a good fit for US. And as I was going to London office, and I was hearing the same over there, that this is a good fit for US and not for UK. So my point here being, while there are opportunistic areas that are a better fit for Europe or certain countries or US, there's also lack of understanding or deep understanding if you're looking into those solutions, and that may give you the wrong impression that this might fly easier potentially with NHS, which may not be the case. So that's one thing. The other thing is we launched a solution in Spain 2 years later, direct to consumer. And initially we were happy that we don't have to deal with HIPAA, and then realized that privacy laws in Europe is not necessarily easier to deal with. And I had to deal with 2 lawyers in parallel. And realizing that even certain areas such as Andalusia, I have to actually follow certain regulations just for that local environment on top of the European side. So these are the things that I think is very important to pay attention to. But back to the question, when we talk about the pain point of healthcare, we have a number of points that probably highlighted here. One is this kind of a striking cost that is growing twice the rate of GDP growth, and that means it's not sustainable now. In 1960, we had about, the cost of healthcare was about 5% of GDP, and now it's about 18%, and it's just going forward. So this is an area that we definitely have to address somehow, and potentially, health tech could be one of the ways that we can, get some help from. The other thing is the shortage of experts such as doctors, nurses. And there are a number of models out there, but probably in the next 1 to 5 years, we're talking about at least, shortage of 100,000, doctors and nurses that we have to address. And this is an average, basically, across the entire US. But when we think about rural areas versus cities, that's kind of a not necessarily homogeneous kind of a distribution. And that's another aspect of that. Another factor I can emphasize is that I'm sure when you go to offices and you realize that there has been a lot of push to adopt EMRs in the past 10, 15 years to collect your data, your blood pressure, your information, that required many entities to basically have some type of an IT, when we think about Kaiser or other organizations. So they have IT, but at the same time, most of these organizations are highly fragmented. And to go further and do better, in all aspects, we need to kind of do a better job and kind of go through a digital transformation and streamline these services. And that's another reason potentially that health tech is needed. And of course, cyber security is another aspect. When you have a old system, in your IT, you're potentially a target for global, attacks that, can come to healthcare, and that's already happening in many major organizations. Some of it, you may hear about it, some of it you may not hear about it, but this is definitely a major risk factor. So these are some of the problems that we do have in healthcare, and it needs to be addressed. And when we think about AI, health tech, there are areas that are already reasonably proven that can help a lot. Back to LLMs and generative AI, that is a hot topic today. Of course, a big portion of that might be not mature today yet for actual use cases, but even early on, Epic team and other EMR groups tested the solution in reasonable pilots and showed that the doctors can save 2 hours per day for their note-taking and can use that time to do something else, including having the more eye contact with patients when patients go to their office. And that's something that's been very challenging for doctors, as they have to take more notes. And at the same time, they have to give attention to the patients. So these are some of the kind of examples, some of the pain points, some of the values. In 2025, we're talking about estimate of $40 to $50 billion saving in healthcare just because COVID pushed us to telehealth. That's just one maybe rare value of COVID. And that's the type of saving we're talking about. But at the same time, I'm going to close this part with the, just on my side, with the point that many pain points in healthcare is not because of technology, it's because of people and processes, the workflows, all the things that all the stakeholders have to sit down and agree on and kind of go through it. And that problem potentially can be addressed better if technology can support those groups in their routine task and in their kind of actions that is taking or consuming their day. I'm sure others have other viewpoints on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think you really added a lot of rich color to why the pain points exist. The one thing I'll just kind of, very punchy leave with the group. Today, United States spends $4.5 trillion on US healthcare every year. Of that $4.5 trillion, $1.2 trillion is on administrative tasks. Not clinical care, not surgery, not medications, not pharmaceuticals. 1.2 trillion, this is like bigger than most countries' GDPs, purely on back office administrative waste. Of that 1.2 trillion, we as Lightspeed have identified 250 billion being particularly ripe for technical and technology innovation, where software alone can solve. And that's where, from a venture perspective, we look at that, yes, there are a lot of things that need to be solved with humans, but there's a lot of things that need to be solved with technology, and hopefully the savings that we can generate from that can be sent back into the system. The fact that a hospital has to fight with an insurance company, and then you have Luigi Mangione killing one of the CEOs of our insurance company, that's like, this is becoming a mainstream issue. And when you're talking about at $1 trillion worth of scale, that's where I hope more founders, more fresh ideas can come. And what's interesting is many of the most interesting founders in healthcare, American healthcare, which is very convoluted with regulatory perspectives, actually come from global. There are either folks from London, there are even folks from East Asia that can come, identify the opportunity, learn from the venture community, and then attack the problem. So I just wanted to add, just give you a sense of that scale and how much of an opportunity there exists.
I agree with Galam that the opportunity set is so much bigger than the current investment going into the healthcare system, right? For us, we focus on, well, first of all, at the macro level, I want to say, whether you look at US, Europeans, most advanced industries, we do have an aging population, right? So that speaks to the healthcare needs. And from the consumer perspective, especially we see in the US, there is a strong demand, not for the elderly, right? For people between 35 to 50, that they want to remain strong, acute, productive, right? As they age, as we mature. And we see that as opportunity sets from the market-driven perspective. On the payer side in the US, we have Medicare, government-backed payers, as well as private insurance. And they realize that we can't just keep spending on healthcare, right? The 4.5 trillion per year. Right now, the deficit discussion that's happening in the US is very acute. And where does that saving coming from? Where is that efficiency coming from? So the payers are also continuously looking at the different solutions and included into their reimbursement that we are seeing as a positive trend to support the growth within the healthcare system. But of course, what they are looking for is a proven evidence that you are saving money over the long term or improving the quality of life. We say the health economics calculations, right? So those are maybe a little more difficult to tackle, but I think if you could open up the payers, the insurance market, it's a tremendous opportunity. So we're very encouraged by the macro environment that we're in today, and we're actively looking for founders and entrepreneurs, finding the right solution and the right channels within the healthcare system. And I think every country has very uniqueness, right? You're all coming from global. I've worked in Asia, in Europe. Every country is different, has a different advantages and different skill sets. So that's what Gallum has mentioned, that is there cross-country learnings that we can look at? The last point I want to mention is the AI components to it. We're seeing AI being applied, whether it's drug development, whether it's consumer healthcare data. There's a lot of data out there. The question is, how do we separate signal from noise? How do we ensure the quality of the data that you are getting? What's the best algorithm to solve the problem you're targeting right now, right? And I think whoever can find the right data set combined with the appropriate algorithm for the problem you're trying to solve is going to make a tremendous success in whichever the area. So the opportunities out there, and I encourage all you entrepreneurs to continue to innovate. And we are, we're as investors, we're here to support you.
And we heard a lot about AI. I just wanted to touch upon on the AI topic. How many of you do use AI for to improve your own health or to improve your well-being, or do you get help or ask questions from ChatGPT and other LLMs to? Oh, okay, yeah, quite good amount of the use of the AI, and that's what I also wanted to discuss with the panelists. How the topic of AI it's a hot topic. We cannot not discuss AI in any of the sessions. So Anthony, maybe you can help with that. Maybe you can help us expand on how AI will help us, in your opinion, in our personal health journey, and you are from the fitness tech world. And please tell us, how will it help for me to become more healthier?
As the conversation progresses, one of the things I will always draw us back to is who is the ultimate customer here? And as I said, it's you, it's your grandparents, it's your children. And think about your grandparents, think about your children, how different their needs are going to be today, but also in the future. And really what AI is a tool to help engage people where they are. And that's something we often forget, is regardless of the tool, if I don't know how to use it or we don't know how to use it, it doesn't matter how powerful it is. And what we want to be able to do with AI and digital technology and all of these applications is improve really one metric, and that's quality of life. My research is with older adults, and the single most common thing that you will hear from somebody 60, 70, and 80 is they want to do what? They want to improve their quality of life. And that's really our goal with technology, with AI, is how can we use these tools to make us healthier, so when we get older, we have a better quality of life, which I know we'll probably talk and touch on as we get in there. So.
Yeah, a couple of points on that. I think as I think we all agree, and you probably have seen in your area, even outside healthcare, a good example of how LLMs or generative AI or machine learning can help in a meaningful way today. At the same time, it's not the first time we have basically the leap of technology here and kind of causing a challenge or for a lot of decision makers to drop some of the key principles of best design. I think Anthony is emphasizing on human-centered design. If anything is supposed to be done, you have to think about the best principles of UI, user experience, and do it with the users together. You cannot just do it in a silo. And the similar point is valid here where, unfortunately for the past 2 years specifically, I've seen numerous examples where we forget to emphasize on what the pain point is that we're trying to solve. You have to study the pain point, you have to find the root cause of pain point, you have to kind of spend time on that before coming up with the solution. And unfortunately, a lot of organizations, they just assume that you can put an LLM or engineering solution on something without doing those basic principles and move forward. The last point I think on this topic is the fact that there's a term that you hear a lot about, digital transformation. Before COVID, most of the entities I'm aware of, they didn't have a proper data platform to have a scalable data management in healthcare, and that's a challenge, meaning if you need to transfer a lot of data from one side to another, or if you need to access your data lake, or you need to do similar actions, you really need to have a modern data platform to do it. And before COVID, there was not a lot of investment in these domains. COVID actually showed that nobody is really for real-time or near real-time data and take actions. And that's why we have seen a shift of investment in those domains. But at the same time, in 2022, with the LLMs and everything else, the confusion kind of got mixed up. And that's why, while I agree, and I've seen examples that entities potentially can benefit from LLM even without that data platform, there are many use cases that's robust platform is needed. You have to make sure you have a great data warehouse, you have a good data lake and things like that to keep the data secure, but also being able to access that data in a secure way and use it and leverage it. And if you don't have it, many of the use cases we talk about or we see will stay at the prototype level and it won't get to the product level. And this is an area that I think we're slowly hearing that more attention, but I believe that it's a big area that is being missed.
I want to touch point on when we're thinking of AI, when you're building an AI solution, say for consumer healthcare or for the healthcare data in general, there is the quality of data that we see that I think warrant a lot of thoughtful approaches, whether it's, do you need the proprietary data? Do you use the public data, right? What kind of variability within the data set you want to have, and particularly the training data set to refine your algorithm, etc. I don't think there is a one answer to all of the questions, to different applications. But for example, the NHS in the UK, with the benefit of universal healthcare, they do have the most extensive healthcare data within the NHS. And the NHS is very active in looking at through those data sets. But elsewhere, you really, as a company, as an entrepreneur, you really need to really understand the strength and weakness of the data set that you're acquiring, whether it's through the public domain, whether you decide to build your own private data to supplement that. There are many different ways to do it. The last point I want to say, the AI, it's not a buzzword. We have been looking at AI since 2016, 17, right? From radiology to genomics. But now with the compute power that we have, I'm very optimistic that we will see exponential advancement with the both the algorithm side and finding the right solution because of the support of the compute power that we have today. So I'm very excited, to look at this space and encourage everyone interested in the space to really think of how you can most efficiently utilize the tools that we have.
Yeah, I'll just, 2 points. Great, all the major points have been said. Point one, I think, is, as a physician, by training myself, the amount of times I saw really good quality physicians make mistakes is actually quite alarming. If you give, they did a study on this, they gave a patient profile to 7 of the top cancer centers in the United States and said, give us a treatment plan for this patient. 7 different responses came in. There's gotta be an absolute truth that how, given the data, what's the best outcome? We haven't seen that. And so we are in the very early innings, I believe, of AI that can begin to be demanded by consumers, actually more than even the physician and the medical community. There will be brave medical doctors who will be like, you know what, the medical doctor with AI will outperform the medical doctor without AI. And we're kind of in the early innings of that. On the personal side, my second point is something, honestly, I just reflect on. You know, I grew up in the I went from undergrad here all the way through my professional life so far, and I've been in touch with some of these, you know, fancy schmancy people who have sold companies, and these guys and women, these men and women get really conscious about their health once they have their big break, because they realize, okay, now I gotta live, and now I can. And what's interesting, many of these people have a team of like 5, 6 physicians taking care of every little aspect. They'll have a mental health person, they'll have a physical PM&R person, and they have all these folks, and when you actually break down how effective they are, they're not that much more effective beyond Dr. GPT. So what I think is there is an opportunity. They make someone certainly feel special, and that's part of the price tag. But I think there is a unique opportunity now that we can democratize high quality data insights, high quality clinical advice. Regulations will make it impossible for us to actually act upon them right now, but I'm getting very excited that each person in this room should be able to, at the price of a Netflix subscription, have a concierge, a sidekick doctor. That's where kind of I believe the future on the consumer side comes.
Well, I personally I accumulated many different injuries throughout the last few years. And I'm really hoping that by paying $99 a month, Dr. GPT will hopefully help me in the future to become even more healthier. I really want to give a microphone to the audience, and before doing that, I wanted to establish some personal connection with our speakers. What do you do for your own health? And why it is important?
I guess I look healthy today. One thing about health it's a personal journey, whether it's mental health, physical, social, whatever the dimension of health and wellness is, it is a personal journey. And one of the things I've learned in my career is what I do for my health, whether it's mountain biking, being in a gym, swimming, dancing, that's my personal journey. So I always will preface what I'm going to say with this what works for me. But if I was working with you as a client, I would understand what works with you and engage with you at that level. But for me, I like to run, I like to walk, I like to work out at the gym, and I get a lot of enjoyment out of those 3 activities on a regular basis. And then I like to change it up from time to time with some different activities. But for me, it's running, walking, which is a great social activity. Nearly all of us can do it. And then spending time in the gym. And my goal is to, again, increase my quality of life. And that's why I do it.
Yeah, so I think, historically I've been doing all type of, team sports. I hated gym. I never liked to go to gym. But again, basketball, volleyball, soccer, and past 10 years tennis. And then back to what Asad said, I've been getting all type of injuries, and one by one you have to sort of slow down. And then as COVID started, I realized that I have to have a little bit of a serious change behavior for myself and have something for my, what I call maintenance or minimum that I have to do. So I kind of decided to do basically minimum of 20-25 minutes mandatory walk and then maybe 1 mile of running every day. And I intentionally kind of set that to be minimum of a 20-25 minutes so that I'm ashamed of myself if I'm saying I didn't have time to do it, because it's very you can do it even between the meetings potentially. And for the past 5 years, I think 90% of the days I managed to do that, and I actually saw the impact in my lab results and a lot of things. Despite that, this is not necessarily any significant kind of exercise, and even not necessarily enough, but it's probably a minimum that I kind of helped me to sort of at least do the maintenance. The other point I want to emphasize a little bit outside the personal side, I'm a big fan of Dr. B.J. Fogg here in Stanford and his methodology for tiny habits and change behavior. If you want to do something, you have to start from a step-by-step process and micro adjustments. You cannot just jump into a big diet plan in January and then do exercise and everything else, because that means by February you're going to drop all of that. So first week, just having breakfast, second week, do something else. And that slowly becomes a second nature for you. And that has helped, some of our customers as well as ourselves. Oh, you have.
Well, two things that I've been doing more recently that I started doing personally. One is I do pretty extensive biomarker testing, about 25 to 30. So I would go to my GP, I tell him the list of the tests I want to do. Those are all off the shelf, right? Everybody can do it. Unfortunately, at least in the US, most of physicians don't prescribe them at your annual preventative care, right? Other than the cholesterol and the A1C, it's pretty minimal as it stands. So if you do a little research, you probably can find a lot more biomarkers. So I take this list, I go to him and ask him to prescribe. The second thing that I started doing more recently was going to the farmer's market as much as I can. I try to go every week if I have time. I live in San Francisco in the city. So I believe in eating local, eating what's in the season, and having our body in tune with the environment you're in. And very luckily, we live in San Francisco, we live in the Bay Area or California. We have abundant produce and take advantage of that. The last thing I want to mention, and I think, as everyone thinking of your health, I more think of what's your risk factor. Everyone has a different risk factor, whether it's your genetic predisposition, whether it's your lifestyle, whether it's whatever it is, right? So understanding what is your risk factor going forward and managing that particular risk factors, whether it's cardiovascular disease, if you have family history, cholesterol, whatever it is, or other risk factors. And I think that's a better way of thinking about managing health other than following any particular trend or diet and cold plunge, whatever.
Awesome. No, I think honestly these all got covered really well. The only kind of maybe a different dimension I'll share, and it's been a little bit of a reflection of myself, is health and wellness, how much mental health and also spiritual health matters. I'm Muslim myself, and I've always kind of viewed ritual as kind of being like, these are, religion's ritual. But when I started to kind of more carefully reflect on like, hey, what are the values of certain, and it could be any religions, there's so many different ways that this could be manifested, but, I'll just give the example in Islam is like, all right, there's 5 pillars. The first pillar is, the creed, which just gives you kind of set of values. The second is, 5 daily prayers, and I'd be like, do I have to 5 days? But if you think about it, it's actually, if you do them right, those are meditation sessions. You really think, you breathe, your breathing improves, and breathing has such a kind of sympathetic, parasympathetic impact on you. Third is fasting. Ramadan, I'm fasting today, it's Ramadan, and I think fasting has generally been proven to be pretty healthy. Fourth is charity. I mean, that gives you a sense of purpose and value in terms of being part of a community. And fifth is the pilgrimage to Mecca, which in some ways is like community. At some point in your life, you have to be part of a community, and how much that helps you with loneliness, etc. So I just would encourage folks who may have, whether it's spiritual or whatever, it doesn't have to be any particular religion, but like find the mental health benefits that actually, with the right intention, you can derive from that as part of a holistic thing that's around health.
Thank you. And you mentioned point on breathing. Me personally, I just recently, maybe a year ago, learned to breathe properly. Like all 30 years before, like I didn't breathe properly. I read a book on breathing, and it turns out there is a right way to do that. Well, maybe now we'll move to more interesting questions. Yes.
Hi. Well, first of all, you all look the picture of perfect health, and thank you for this discussion. As I kind of observe on the last things that you mentioned, mountain biking, walking, going to the farmer's market, connecting with your spirituality, I'm curious, when you think about AI's disruptive impact on fitness and health, like what consumer experiences excite you when you think about the next 12 to 18 months? And bonus question, what do you think is defensible from a business standpoint?
Who wants to start?
I'll talk about it more on what we see on the fitness side in terms around how AI is being used, and it's really used to enable people. Whether, if you think about all of your communities and the countries you've all come from, AI has a different use in many different communities, but what we're seeing in terms of access to information, access to knowledge, yes, it's hard to understand if it's good or bad knowledge, but what it's allowing people the opportunity is to find out things and be a little bit more curious. And one of the things is finding what we call finding your why. You can be curious about a concept or a fitness belief, and you can use a tool, or you can just use ChatGPT or whoever you want, Perplexity or something, to kind of open that door to curiosity. And I think in the old days, before we had AI, we had to go and find an expert to get that information. Now we have an opportunity to go online and search for it. And I preface this with, yes, it might be the wrong information, but what it does is it starts that curiosity. And I think that seed is really important, especially for our younger generation, to be able to think and search out for more information.
Yeah, in terms of exciting areas, a kind of a generic area is if you think about before 2020, there were a lot of efforts put on leveraging machine learning and NLPs, and a lot of solutions that showed a great promise but never managed to get to the scale. And if I want to just bring something in generically, I'm excited about those areas and the fact that now with the compute power, with improvement in digital kind of a transformation and data platforms, as well as the power of LLMs, I'm excited about converting some of those to true products and actually adoption that hopefully we see. Some of these could be, for example, a significant number of efforts in the radiology side to empower the doctors to optimize their workflow. And while some of it is already in use, it has the power to get much more, and much power to do much more for doctors and for patients. So that's probably a generic side, but certainly again, if you think about example solutions in the wellness side, there are virtual physical therapy companies, for example, that have been in place for a while as an example, but now with the power of augmented reality videos, and they can even help the patient and to see if they're doing the moves correctly. And these are getting closer to actual product, while the prototypes existed before probably for the past 10 years. And we see some scaling even as we speak. So these are some examples.
I'm quite excited about the how do we measure aging, right? We all know our age from the birth certificate, but everyone age differently. And how well do you know how well you're aging, right? If I ask, what's your biological age? And I'm a strong believer you can't improve something you cannot measure. If you can't measure it, we don't know how to improve it. We don't know how to get better at it. In terms of defensibility, I think healthcare is actually quite a sticky business. If you think of, if you have a solution that people like, how long would they stay with that solution, whether it's a service provider or whether it's even your gym, right? You just keep paying into it. And that's by definition is pretty defensible. But the question is, how do you acquire the customers, right? If you're a new company, how do you acquire them and retain them? I do think that, like I have mentioned earlier, that the US consumers are actively looking for those solutions. And if you have a good solution, I think you will find a market for it in this environment. And there's more and more competition coming in as well. So you have to keep improving and providing the evidence and really build the healthcare has very different structural, right? So built the insurance, built the other defensibility around the business model, whatever that business that you're building.
I think it got covered really well.
Cool.
So,
Aloha, Ralph Morales, fellow San Diegan. As a founder, budding, I have a couple questions, just two-part. With the rapid rise of the AI digital health solutions, how do you evaluate this balance between consumer adoption and clinical validation. I'm curious on that as a founder. And then second is for this intention-based behavioral health concierge that I'm building for sleep. I'm all about sleep, on a mission to get more people, more nights of better sleep. What are the opportunities you see for solutions like that to personalize and optimize the outcomes using intention-based coaching?
Can you please repeat the first question?
Yeah, how do you evaluate between consumer adoption and clinical validation on these digital health solutions?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. It's a tug of war, but right now it's very clear. You know, diagnosis and treatment is under NMD supervision, right? I think the first steps towards that is going to be, do you have to pay physicians for their time, or can you pay physicians for like the outcome, right? Because right now a lot of it is like to say like, hey, a lot of American healthcare is basically like physicians spent 20 minutes. That 20 minutes, results in X dollars. But there are some companies, and we're keeping very close track of them. And most of these are actually being started by physicians themselves, because they kind of see the writing on the wall. They see how effective they could be. So I think first it'll start with how reimbursement begins to change, and then slowly but surely it'll just be almost like inevitable. For example, like, hey, chest x-rays. Do you really need radiologists to be looking at chest x-rays, or should they be looking at like lung nodules? So let's start automating the things that are relatively non-controversial. And then slowly but surely, I think we're gonna march. And how fast that march happens, no one knows for sure, but I'm excited about it. Yeah. Second question was about sleep, right? Oh man, I'm not a sleep expert. I don't know. Maybe you guys know more.
Was it
Sherwin
behavioral
wants to-
health? I didn't catch the question completely. Was it the value of behavioral health or AI in behavioral health?
Yeah, like intention-based, right? Like today, a lot of it's transactional. You know, your doctor says, oh, you have apnea, here's your CPAP, good luck with that. And, I see a huge opportunity for AI around the micro habits that you just talked about. To be a concierge for habit change.
I see.
Throughout the entire journey, from activation to diagnosis to decision-making around therapy to implementation of a better lifestyle. That whole journey could be a relationship instead of a transaction.
Your
Sure.
health AI agent.
So I think that I would actually classify two different things, but that are kind of interrelated. One is behavioral health and mental health historically has been heavily subjective in my view compared to even rest of the healthcare. But as of 2013, 14, we were seeing companies starting to use voice for detecting depression, and it was starting to show that objectivity that I think we need that. And I think the biggest example is, to measure things such as aging. But the other part is on the sleep also, there has been a lot of study, but ironically, we don't also have, most of us, including myself, don't have the good knowledge about what sleep hygiene is. And that's about optimizing that mental health or wellness we're talking about. And that doesn't require AI, by the way. And so I think, on the other side, I think we tend to go towards extremes and missing the basics, but AI can help to educate, to show the power of meditation that I think Callum mentioned earlier, or things like that, and even at the education level. But I agree with you that, if you can address the business model of that behavioral change kind of a concierge, that's heavily needed. And I think there are companies now on the wellness side, on the mental health, that have achieved the scale in the past couple of years, and they can be seen as examples.
Let's have maybe one more question, because we will run out of time soon. Let's maybe have 5 minutes, and then we will have to close.
Hi, panel. Thank you so much. Well, look, more devices generate more data, and each device talks to you about how they will help you measure walking rings or sleep better. But we as a consumer don't know what is better for us, because what we studied in school was a couple of years ago, and now we are busy running our families, our businesses, our jobs. So who do we trust? Because we feel that the person or the company who's selling the device will only talk good about themselves. Like, there are days when I have not completed my rings on Apple Watch and it frustrates me. Although I'm all in for walking, And I've seen your YouTube videos, Anthony, about the kettlebell training. But how do I educate myself in a way that it is internalized and it is not dependent on a device?
Well, first of all, you have to trust them. But
Thank you.
who else should we trust?
I was going to say, how much time do we have? You know, as I was thinking about this, AI is kind of like, you know, when YouTube came out, it was this amazing thing, right, that we could use to get information and find things. And we learned very quickly that there's no filters. And that's the same thing with AI. And I think fundamentally, access to information and knowledge and knowing what to do are quite different. So what we deal with when I work with people now is trying to help them understand what feels right, what seems reasonable at a very low level. Because at the end of the day, if you put in a profile or ask a question of Perplexity or chat or something, it's going to give you what's out there. And we don't know, we as a group collective don't know if it's wrong or right. So I think one of the things we need to be doing as a group, as an industry, is be comfortable saying, don't believe everything you see, just because it's on a screen doesn't make it true. And the other thing is, there are a lot of health and fitness professionals, you know, my company, some of the other organizations, who spend years getting that education so they can help educate their customers. And so what the industry, the fitness industry, is doing is continuing to evolve so we can better serve the consumer and help them understand what to do. Because the more information we have access to, the more we need to be able to filter. And that's the reality of the world we live in. I don't know if that answers your question, but...
Yeah, I think this is a great question, and it's a major challenge because the systems are generally more of a sick care than a healthcare. So we don't really, I mean, the system is not necessarily there to sort of solve the patient's problem. Of course, business drives a lot of these use cases. A lot of it is about controlling the situation rather than addressing the root cause. And the other problem we have when we think about, you know, the value of supplements or the value of the wellness data, generally speaking, because there hasn't been significant money for those trials at the larger scale, that information is not really solid for the most part. But thanks to some of the technology companies, they'll say that to smartwatches and others, of course, there are, or even groups such as Quantified Self, that, you know, people that are kind of obsessed with measuring their own data, there are things that you can kind of dig into and identify potentially what works for you. And slowly also do a kind of a A/B testing maybe on yourself to sort of slowly adjust, and also being very objective about, you know, how does this help you? How does this help your lab results and things like that? I mean, again, we're going back to that micro adjustments, I believe.
I would say you can't trust any of them. So, you know, the data that you are seeing, let's say Apple Watch, and we'll use, I'm wearing Garmin today, but I've tried multiple ones, Apple Watch and fitness, the Fitbits. So if one device, you do a 1 hour walk, one device will say you burn 150 calories. Another device say you burn 300 calories. We tend to believe the 300. We say, oh yeah, this was fast walk, you know, it was on a hill. And they say you're not accurate when you're giving you 150. So that's why it goes back to the data quality question. What you really want is the raw data, which Apple would give to you as consumer. But Apple would not give the raw data to a third-party partners. So if you're Amazon, you tell Apple to give you the data, they will not give it to you, the raw data. Right, so, and for sleep as well, right? Oura Ring, Apple Watch, they measure mostly heart rate related. It doesn't measure your breathing. If you go to a sleep lab, it measures your breathing. And do you have stops? How many do you stop breathing during the night? How many stops you have? What's the pattern of both breathing and heart rate and your blood oxygen level, which gives you a much fuller, much more accurate sleep pattern. But with that being said, it is helpful in motivating individuals to stick to the habits, to monitor trends. So that is useful in that sense. If it's 100% accurate to the number, you know, that's more questionable, right? So from the company building perspective, again, you really need to understand the quality of the data, where data coming from, right? What can you trust, and how do you develop from there?
Well, thank you. It's a very energizing discussion, but we have to wrap up. I know you are all waiting to go to one of the fancy dinners, one of the 3 fancy dinners. Today, I personally learned that I have to do more than what I'm doing for myself, in my own health journey, and I got a bit more confidence that AI hopefully gonna help me in the future in my health and fitness journey. Before we wrap up, maybe each one of you will give some final thoughts to the audience, final last words that you want to leave audience with.
Sure. Yeah. Look, I just thank you all for coming, and my one piece of advice is don't let this experience, the network you're building here, to just kind of fizzle. I think it's easy to let that happen when you get back to the day-to-day. So just put that effort. I kind of make it like after my personal advice whenever I conference or something like an experienced grad school, like what are your like 10, 20 people who you will no 6 months should pass that I don't talk to this person, or at least send them an email, something like that, and just stick to that, because that's how these networks like don't fizzle out after you spend so much time investing your time into them. So.
Well, I go back to this opportunity set is tremendous in front of us. Whether no matter which market you're in, there's opportunity in each market, and just stay calm, carry on. I know it's an uncertain world we're living in right now, but always need healthcare, and we all aspire to have a healthy and happy life. So good luck.
Yeah, I think main point is, I try to also kind of point out some of the challenges just to have a balanced conversation here. But as we go back to that $4 trillion cost and a lot of challenges and the demand on the patient side, this is a major opportunity for entrepreneurs, for people that are interested to get into healthcare. And I think definitely encourage everyone to sort of work together and push it forward. Thanks all.
Thank you. And one thing I would leave with you is it doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter what you do. When you are sick, that's the most important thing. And so I would really encourage you to find the thing that gives you that little bit each day that gets you up to do something a little bit more active. And like BJ Fogg said, it is really small, tiny habits, because at the end of the day, when you're sick, nothing else matters. And we live in a world, unfortunately, where sickness is prevalent. So I would just encourage you to make little small changes, and hopefully that'll give you a little bit better of a quality of life day by day. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you all.